5.3 Low Power FM, Tacoma y Pierce County. KQWZ 106.5 Low Power FM, One America Voice en South King County.
Good morning, Pastor Dennis.
Good morning.
Good morning to everyone that is listening to us through VT Radio Universal. Thank you for listening this cloudy morning here in Tacoma, Washington. And I was commenting to Chris, our director here, producer, that gets up every Sunday morning and help us here with the show Siembra, that what a different day from yesterday to today here in Washington State, even though I still love it. I love the rain. And so welcome to everyone that is listening to us. My name is Yasmin Ford, host of the show Siembra with Siembra. I'm saying it like like American now. And my co-host Dennis Gunnarsson, that he sits here, Pastor Dennis Gunnarsson, every third Sunday of the month. Good morning, Pastor Dennis. I have my coffee, I have some juice here. So, and this has been, I feel like it's been a while that we have sit here. I don't know why it feels like we not been here for a while.
Well, we've had so many guests lately.
Okay, yes. And yesterday I know you went out and do the homeless. How is that went? Because, I want to touch bases a little bit with what's going on around the country. And one of the things one of the big problems that we have in this country is more than 600,000 people are in the street homeless. And we see it every day here in Washington State. We see it in Seattle. We see it here in Tacoma. Right down the road where we live, we see more and more people living in the street. And we have Rodney Richardson, that he started a nonprofit homeless, that he go out and serve the homeless community. So tell us a little bit how that went yesterday. I was supposed to be there, but... Yes.
It was interesting. The program, what's unique about going out with Rodney is he has a truck that has a wraparound with big words, sidewalk rescue. And because of it, people are able to, people who have
recognize it. They already recognize it. Yes.
Notice it and they'll wave.
Yes.
To let him know that they're there. And that's really, really cool. Yesterday, we didn't see as many people out in the street, and I don't know whether it was because of the heat and they had found a more secluded place to
keep themselves cool,
or whether the impact of the state of Washington and Tacoma trying to get them off the street is really starting to be noticeable. I don't know which one it is.
Yeah,
I hope it's the latter. I don't know if you have noticed, we have a small town village moving into Spanaway.
I know. I noticed it.
Thrilled. I'm so excited about it. I really do not understand the objection to it, because where it is, it's isolated from the neighborhoods because of 2 4-lane roads on both sides of it, and then federal property behind it. So but people will be opposed to anything.
And I was thinking, it passed. I guess it passed because I know there was an objection. It was going back and forth because they said it was unsuitable to build in that property because of something with the land. But I guess it went through.
As far as I know, it's gone through. Everything seems to be celebrating it.
Okay.
But anyway, one thing that I found was really cool yesterday, it seems like every time we've gone out, there's been something different that has been unique.
Mm-hmm.
The first time, we met the gold medal.
Yes, boxer. Yes.
He is now in an apartment.
Oh my God! Thank you.
So that's really awesome.
And I know there was an article about him in the news. Yeah.
Newspaper and on 2 different TVs.
So we really don't know. Everybody's story is unique, and people
Yes.
that end up in the street is not only some. And I would say, I want to say, I don't know about numbers. Probably 2, 3, 4, 5% are in the streets because of drugs. But everybody that is in the street is not because of drugs.
Yes.
Everyone's story is unique to themselves. So we need to not judge and be more thinking how it can be you, it can be one of your relatives, it can be anybody that can end up, especially with the financial situation here in this country, with the inflation, with the housing problems that we have in. It can be anybody, we can say you are a paycheck from being homeless, and it's true, because once you don't have a job, it goes spiral down from there, so we need to be more mindful and think about people as individual and not box and put everybody in one bucket and stereotype them as they're out there because they want to or because of drugs.
Yeah. But yesterday, what was really neat is Rodney always, whenever he has somebody go out on the street with him, he treats them to coffee.
Yes, I know.
He goes to a specific barista, a freestanding, little shack kind of place. Yesterday we were in there. As soon as we pulled up, apparently the whole staff was there for whatever reason, so we got to greet them all. But they said, hold on just a minute, we have something for you. And they presented this food box.
Oh my God, you never know, see?
Someone had a relative that passed, and they had that food that they needed to get rid of, and they knew to bring it to this coffee stand, and this coffee stand knew immediately to give it to
Rodney.
But what was unique is Rodney goes to the homeless people who are not in any facility whatsoever. So the food that we give out has to be food that doesn't need to be refrigerated.
Yes.
Easily opened and consumed without the aid of,
have to use a stove or heat or anything like that. Yeah.
Exactly. But this stuff required the use of that.
Okay.
And when we went to our predetermined starting place,
areas,
who was the first person that we met? A guy who was in an RV that had a working
oh my God. God is so good.
It felt like a divine appointment.
Yes. God is good. God is good. So, and today is Sunday, May 21st, fifth month of the year, and it's going through very fast. And we decided to talk a little bit about the debt ceiling because it's been on the news forever. I think it's gonna pass. I don't know. Maybe me. I think is a very. I think they're making it more bigger because it has to pass. There's no way the United States is gonna let this happen, and I think the two big political parties are just pandering over it. But at the end, it has to pass. That we know. And I was reading and listening more about it. and when it started, the debt ceiling, that in Spanish is la deuda, el techo, ¿cómo se dice? El techo o el ceiling is like the el límite. Oh, why they call it ceiling then? What is the meaning of ceiling?
Ceiling means you're not supposed to.
You reach to you.
You're not supposed to go beyond it.
So let's talk a little bit about it and when it started and why is the United States every year we end up doing this. And for me, that I'm an immigrant living here for a while, I feel that this country and capitalism, I'm going to criticize it. I know a lot of people wouldn't like it. Socialism, we have communism, and we have capitalism. We have all these different isms. And I don't think capitalism is much better. It just runs a little different. This free range that we have, that businesses and private entities can do whatever they want, and we creating this gap bigger and bigger between the rich and the poor. They're really dwindling. We are almost disappearing the middle class. And the reason we talk a little bit about the homeless community is because that's part of that too. That more and more this gap is getting bigger and bigger between the rich and the poor. And capitalism is feels like, yeah, you can become and do whatever you want. But I feel that we become products and we becoming more profitable. I'm thinking of the prisons, the detention centers, where people, in order for these people to make money, contracts and stuff, they need to house human beings, and human beings are becoming more of a product to these entities, to these different things. The prison is from, I think from the meals to the clothes that the prisoners wear in the prison, is everybody is making $1 keeping people in prison. And capitalism is one of the things that I feel that some people think is the best thing in the world, but it also has this negative. And the United States strive in debt. We have this mentality that debt is a good thing, when the Bible said that if you have debt, you are a slave of the devil. You are. And China is the biggest winner when it comes to the United States acquiring debt. So let's start a little bit about this.
Yeah. Sometimes I think it's important to understand we all, when we talk about capitalism, have different definitions of that.
Mm-hmm.
Large C capitalism, I agree with you. Small C capitalism, and I use that in that the idea of supply side.
I'm gonna move a little bit.
Dynamics is a good thing. But when it becomes king and cannot be regulated, that's when it becomes transactional, and that's when it becomes cruel.
Oh my God. Sorry.
Well, we have to. It's a valuable tool, but it can't be the only tool in our arsenal. We have to have socialistic understandings as well. It's like socialism. Socialism, if it's a capital S, can be really detrimental, but as a small s, it can be a valuable tool. We can't get so fixated on one system versus another. Can't have a blended system, and that's what we need is a blended system.
And I think we sort of have that here in the United States. When you talk about socialism, because we have certain parts of the government that has these social services that help the poor, and not only the poor. We also have people that when we pay into our social security, and when we retired, and the health care, all those different things are sort of socialism.
Mm-hmm. The biggest problem with socialism is not that it's transactional or accrual, but that it is cumbersome and ridiculous. It's like democracy. Democracy is a tremendous tool, but it can be very cumbersome because you can't get everybody's opinion on everything. Otherwise, you'll never do anything. You know, so that we have to take priorities, and we have to have a system in which the people, everybody has a voice at some level, but then it has to be left to representatives to keep connected to the people,
to the communities that they're representing,
to make the rest of the decisions. And our system currently is royally screwed up because we have those people who are representative of the public that are making decisions for private entities and for special interests, and not for the larger community. If the Republicans represented the communities that they served, we wouldn't be having this debt ceiling crisis, because the impasse between the two parties is that the Republicans refuse to bend on the upper 2%. They refuse to let the upper 2% be more vulnerable. They defend the upper 2% more than they care, more than they represent or defend.
And they are the defenders and protectors of the rich, and
Exactly.
And that is because they have also a gain to win with the rich people. And one of the things that let's go into, we're gonna talk about the debt ceiling. So I don't know if I did my little bit of research, and I know that in 1917, I think it's when it started.
1915. It was during World War I.
And I think every time I believe, and you correct me, that the United States would like, I would buy a car. Let's say you buy a car and the car is $20,000. I would go and say, okay, I have a debt of $20,000. I need $20,000. I believe that's how it started. It didn't start it as a credit that you needed amount. I believe when I read, it was that you already had the debt and you were going and say, okay, well, I need money to pay this debt. And then I believe it changed in the 70s and in the 30s, where the United States said, okay, we need credit, and we need to upper credit. I don't know, maybe I got it wrong. So you tell me.
Okay, we have to understand the government's version of credit. They're called bonds. So for World War I, they sold what was introduced was war bonds. And so they would have the product called war bonds, kind of like a credit. It's kind of like owning stock. Okay, but in stock would be for public companies. Bonds were for the government. So they created the savings bonds that people could purchase, and it's kind of like they were purchasing a part of the U.S. government. and the U.S. government guaranteed a certain return on those bonds. And so the initial debt ceiling was created to give the government permission to sell a certain number of bonds. Okay, and that's what a debt ceiling is related to, is how many of those bonds can they purchase and sell.
But for regular people, let's break it down a little bit more with regular words. So you have a credit card. You have a credit card, and the credit card give you a limit of less than $20,000, and you max in those $20,000. I went and bought a car for $20,000, and I don't have no more money. So next year I want to buy a stove, and I need $5,000 to buy the stove. So I go into the credit card company and said, hey, I need you to increase my limit on my credit card because I need more money to purchase this stove. So I don't, and the confusion here for me is the limit is based on what we already owe, or it is based on what we're going to spend?
Okay, when we create, back at the time that the bonds were created, we really didn't have the modern day stock market. Okay. The stock market has allowed the private industry to raise funds in a structure in which a set-up structure where people could go to particular stock market locations and see what companies they could buy into, and they could buy into someone's potential, basically. Okay. Bonds are the same way. Before the stock market and before bonds, you had to go out and you had to find rich people to invest in you, or you had to have savings enough to invest in yourself. Those are two ways that you could raise money to do something. You'd have to have these big fundraisers and all, whatever. But a bond is a product that people could go to their local bank and they could purchase a bond. They could go to whatever these places were that these bonds were available. Okay. A credit card company is different than a bond system. Credit card company is a private entity that sells credit and extends and works as a middleman between a person who buys their own credit and the company that they're buying something from. So we can buy into a credit card system, and we have a little card that says that you can borrow up to a certain amount of money, and we will be the intermediary for that. That bond system is not that way at all. Okay, it's the Congress allows them to print so many bonds. That's what the debt ceiling is related to, is creating these bonds, and then they can print those things, and they can sell it. And the thing about the bonds is we don't just put any parameters on who can buy those bonds. So over the years, foreign companies have bought our bonds, especially China and Japan. Bought a lot of bonds, and because bonds have always, in the U.S., have always been considered the safest investment you can ever make, because the U.S. government will not allow it to default. Now that will radically change if if the debt ceiling is allowed to default.
And I don't think it's going to happen, but let me read here a little bit here. The U.S. government hit its congressionally imposed 31.4 trillion borrowing limit in January, and Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen has warned that the country could run out of cash as early as June 1st if the Democratic President Joe Biden and Republican House Speaker Kevin McCarthy are unable to reach a deal to raise the debt ceiling. But while a default will be unprecedented, according to the most experts, this isn't the first time Washington has been down this road. Since the 1950s, both political parties have engaged in legislative battles over the debt ceiling, each using it to paint the other as financially irresponsible, only to reach an agreement before markets begin to panic. So I don't think it's going to happen.
It wasn't until the 1990s that the battles really ensued, and most of our debt problems are tied to two categories of things that happened. One of them, two different types of categories. So the one category is social upheaval. So that includes wars. World War I and World War II were huge additions to the debt crisis, as well as the wars in the Middle East with under Trump or under Bush. That was another huge addition to the debt.
So we had, but it started also with Reagan in the 1980s and 90s, and then we had Bush, the two Bush, and now President Trump.
Well, that's one category of contributors to the national debt. The other category of contributors to the national debt is reduction in taxes
for the rich.
Well, regardless, but especially for the rich, because the rich are the ones that, if they pay taxes, they're paying a percentage of their income, and that's a lot larger amount than what you or I pay.
Yes.
So, the Ronald Reagan did two things. He not only reduced debt, the most significant aspect of it is the debt. He reduced the taxes, and most significant is for the wealthy, because they're the ones that make the huge difference.
I think he started that trend.
He did.
Yes.
Plus, he introduced a thinking system that
we don't need the government.
If you do things for the rich, it will filter down to the
trickle
poor.
Down, they call it.
Trickle down economics, which
never happened.
Which has been a colossal failure. But the Republican Party, in spite of the projections, used it to convince the American people.
I don't know.
To give benefits to the rich.
I don't know. How does that work? But let me read what you were saying. Here is what to know about the history of the debt ceiling and how it provides context for the current political battle. What is the debt ceiling and why it was created? The debt ceiling limit refers to a ceiling imposed by the Congress in 1917 that sets the maximum amount of outstanding debt the USA can incur. The first debt limit was established to give the Treasury autonomy over borrowing by allowing it to issue debt up to the ceiling without congressional approval, making it easier to finance mobilization efforts in the World War I. Before that, Congress generally had to authorize the Treasury to borrow in smaller increments. But the U.S. began to accumulating more debt as it got involved in more wars abroad. After entering World War II, the U.S. raised the debt limit every year to accommodate increased borrowing. According to the Bipartisan Policy Center, by the end of the war in June of 1946, the debt limit is lower to $275 billion as a war costs dissipate and the federal government begins to run 3 years of surpluses. The federal debt limit remains unchanged and this level for 8 consecutive years, the longest such period since its inception.
Yeah, there's another category of the social upheaval also includes things like health crises like the pandemic,
Mm-hmm.
and it also includes inflation, which
I think all of that is
recession.
connected. I think the pandemic pushed that to another level when we had that worldwide pandemic. We had people complaining because I was talking to my brother in Panama. He said, "Oh, Panamanian government, we don't have no jobs and this." I said, "This is globally. You got to understand that the pandemic did this everywhere in the world. This is a global problem."
Right. Well, there were 3 related things that happened during the pandemic that all contributed to the debt problem. One of them was the pandemic, which meant that there was less commerce happening, which meant there was less money coming in.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. There was a tax deduction. There was a lowering in taxes that Trump instituted. Okay. And then there were stimulus payments that was sent out.
Mm-hmm.
All of those contributed to it. The stimulus payments kept us out of a recession. So even though they didn't benefit, they caused a debt problem, but then they helped alleviate the debt problem by bringing business back, which meant that a higher intake
Mm-hmm.
from taxes resulted, which would then allow to lower the debts. So the stimulus kind of neutralizes itself if it works right. If it doesn't work right, then it screws us. One of the problems is, the government's role is to keep life moving and to keep everybody healthy. And the debt ceiling reflects how much the government has invested in doing that. But then in recent decades, it's the 2%
The
are the
wealthiest,
ones
yes.
who benefited
Mm-hmm.
the most
Mm-hmm.
from the debt, and they don't pay in to lower the debt.
Yeah, I'm reading here. In the last two decades, the U.S. has added 25 trillion in debt, spending nearly 1 trillion more than it receives in taxes and other revenue every year since 2001, in large part due to financing wars, tax cuts, emergency responses, and spending federal spending. The makeup of the difference, the government has to borrow money to continue to finance payments to the Congress as already authorized, that are already authorized.
And the reference to already authorized, there is a category of expenditures that are automatic. The Congress or the Senate doesn't have to authorize them when they authorize a new budget. And that's Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid.
It shouldn't be, but it looks like that's what's been happening.
Well, they're not. They don't authorize those every year. That has to be a separate bill to either enhance it or reduce it. But when they do the budgets every year, that's presumed to be part of the budget. They don't vote on that.
And why it is that it feels that that's I think the Democratic Party, I'm gonna be the devil advocate here.
Yeah.
I think the Democratic Party used that also to put fear into the people, to have people think, okay, this is good. That it can be, because it can be. They can reduce it, like they can, increase it. But I think a lot of times it's this thing about the two parties using these as a political pawn in order to put fear in people, to believe that this can happen. That I don't know. I think it can happen, but a lot of times it just feels like they use this too.
I'm sure they do. The Republican Party is the primary one that manipulates that kind of stuff. It used to be the Democratic Party. Before the 60s, it was
change.
The devil was the Democratic Party. In the 70s, they switched.
And right here I'm reading, since 1960s, Congress has raised, extended, and revised the debt limit 78 times.
Yeah.
70 separate times, of which 49 was under the Republican president and 29 was under the Democratic presidents. According to the Department of Treasury, in each of those instances, Congress took action on the debt limit before the nation default.
And you know what is interesting? If you drum down further on those 49 times under a Republican president and 29 under the Democratic president, there's only been a half a dozen or less times when they have done what they are doing now. Okay.
So
really only one other time, which was 2011. Both times were under a Democratic president. When the Republican president is in office, they resolve it long before it becomes threatening and scary. But about 2 or 3 times under a Democratic president.
Yeah, I know President Obama that happened.
Yeah.
President Obama it happened. Yeah.
It's been
when President Trump, ex-president, prior president, when Trump was president, I didn't hear I didn't hear anything about the debt ceiling. They already passed it. We didn't even know that he increased this. President Trump, we have Reagan, that he started that trend. And then we have the two Bushes that continue it. And then President Trump has increased it more than 3 or 4 times than anybody else in the history. So these 4 presidents increased the amount of money that we owe because they cut taxes on the rich.
Well, we can't ignore the fact that that President Obama raised the debt more than Trump did, but he was also in office for 8 years.
No, but that's what we're saying. Trump did it in 4 years, and Obama. Remember when Obama came in to be president?
Yeah.
Bush already had the financial. We had the crisis in 2008 that he had to do something about it.
Right. You know, Bush Jr. did.
Oh my God.
Probably one of Reagan and Bush Jr. were the 2 most damaging when it comes to the national debt. Reagan, because of his trickle-down economics and a tax cut, that has derailed us ever since. But George Bush
Jr.
to a war that wasn't legitimate, and also having a tax cut.
I think
Obama had to deal with the recession that George Bush helped create.
Yes.
But had been building anyway. And he did extend Bush's tax break. So he does owe some responsibility in that. But still, that over 8 years it was 70% increase, while under Trump, for 4 years it was 40%.
And one of the things that I was thinking is that we in this country, a lot of times we don't think of. And one of the things that you said that was kind of key is that when it comes to Republican presidents, they just do it. They don't really make a big thing out of it. When after the fact we find out that Trump did what he did. The same thing with Bush. After Bush was off of office is when we find out what happened. You know, and the Democrats, for some reason, and that's what I'm saying, they create this thing and they wait for last minute. I don't think they think long term. They don't start doing strategy before it gets there. That I think the Republicans, they already have a plan, and this is what we're gonna do. You know, we're gonna push it through. When the Democrats, they wait for last minute.
This is not the Democrats that are waiting for the last minute.
I know that, but
this is Congress in general, and it's specific.
The Republicans are whole in it. Yes, but what I'm saying,
because the people who are getting off scot-free are the rich.
Well, and what
they're the ones that can, if they paid their taxes, they could reduce the national debt immensely.
But what I'm trying to say is that with President Trump, we didn't hear this. We didn't have all this oh my God, this is gonna happen. If they don't do something, this is gonna happen. If we don't do something, this is gonna happen.
And that's not because the Republicans did anything right. That was because the Democrats didn't try to turn this into a political battle.
That they should, because then we wouldn't know what he was doing. We wouldn't know that he increased the tax, reduced the taxes for the rich in a way that is just crazy.
The Democrats did react to that, and they did react to the stimulus packages that had no accountability attached to them. They yelled and screamed that we don't oppose a stimulus package, but we do oppose the lack of accountability.
Well,
and the Republicans refused to move on that. The Democrats knew that there needed to be a stimulus and it needed to go out, and so they conceded to it not having any accountability. Well, now we've got billions of dollars that the courts are having to win back by taking these entities that misrepresented themselves, and I'm still waiting to see if they're going to hold the churches accountable that misrepresented
oh my
themselves.
God, we don't even want to go. We don't even want to get there, right? Because we had churches, $1 million churches that got money.
Oh yeah.
I don't know. Why would you even take it? Why would you take it? Even if you got it, you should say no. We don't need this money, unless you're gonna build a homeless facility, right? But the churches, what they're doing is building bigger churches again to house people, because people are becoming a product. People are becoming commodity. That's what's happening here. Becoming profitable to host people.
There are legitimate churches still out there, but there are a whole lot of churches that are businesses.
Yeah.
They are a way to get rich.
I call it corporate religion.
Yes. The prophetic movement is a part of that. They legitimize this corporate religion.
And a lot of the churches say, well, the books that we sell and write and all that stuff, but this should be a show by itself. It should be a show by itself to see that. And when I was driving here, I was listening to NPR, and they were talking about how it is that people are coming less and less religious, and this is the reason, because they see the hypocrisy of the church, not of God, because I still feel that I don't question God, and I have a faith and I believe in my God, but the church I do question, and the church I do criticize. I know a lot of people say you don't criticize the church, and we created a notion that you don't question the church, you don't question the pastors, you don't question what they do, and you put them above God, because I know I could come to my God and question him. I might not get an answer. I might not get an answer, but I know he's not going to strike me and kill me because I question him, That we created this notion that the church and the pastors and the leaderships are above God. I feel that way sometimes.
Well, it's because this has become a human religion. This is not a lot of religion today has nothing to do with the Almighty.
No, absolutely.
It is all about human rules and human belief systems that are propagated to control humans.
Yeah. We need to have a show about this, because one of the biggest things that concern me is Christianity in Africa. It's becoming very bad. It's horrible what the so-called missionaries that come from here and other parts of the Europe world is doing in Africa when it comes to the LGBT community, the transgender. It's just crazy how people are dying in these places because they can go over there freely and say, you know what, you don't deserve to be, and you need to be killed because you are something evil.
Yeah.
It's, oh my God. But yes, we need to talk about this one day. But we kind of went off for a little bit. Okay, so we reading here. I have. When was the last time the U.S. was debt free? January of 1835 was the first and only time all of the governments interest bearing debt was paid off, according to the Treasury Department. President Andrew Jackson, who was suspicious of banks and did not trust the paper money they issued, liquidated the Second Bank of the United States, returning the government original investment plus a profit. Wow. Andrew Jackson.
Which president was that?
Andrew Jackson.
Andrew Jackson. And that was
in 1835.
1835.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
As a result, the government had a huge surplus of money at $17.9 million, far greater than the actual government expenditures for the year. Congress divided the surplus up among the states, which were bogged down with debt.
Right.
1835.
Yeah.
Yes.
That was back when the U.S. government refused to get involved with the international situation at all.
And I think Jimmy Carter, God bless his, he's still alive. He did a little bit of that too, because he refused to go into war. And then here it says the last time the federal government ran a surplus was in 2001.
Yeah.
And that was before Bush, because I believe that Bush went in yes.
That was during Clinton.
Yes. And I don't understand people in the South that they take money from us, from California, Washington State, to give to the red states, because we have these states that, you know, and for them to not get an understanding of how these states run and how the politicians take the social narrative to keep them distracted of what really is happening. You know, when you go to Mississippi and when you go to Alabama, when you go to these different states where they're so poor, and we're not talking about black people, we're talking about white and black people. The rich make money when they keep us divided. Right. The rich make money when they keep us, because it's we as black and black, I get the understanding that we need each other. Yeah. That there is no divide when it comes to the West Coast and the South, because the West Coast help the South runs the stuff. Yeah. But the politicians and the rich people make money when they do that. They keep us divided. Divide, conquer, divided. The division keep the rich and the politicians with money.
Uh-huh. Yeah, the South, from the foundation of this country, have had a system where only a special group of whites have access to whatever, and they control everything. And so for up until the 1950s, because the South had more people, and they had this system, the U.S. government ran that way. And then when the Northern Democrats stood up to that and tried to help the minorities, then the Southern Bloc went Republican, and the same thing has continued.
And I'm thinking that if we I don't know how to. I don't understand. I don't know how to even. How do you change people's mindset to think that? I mean, me and you are sitting here. You as a white male and an Afro Latina woman, that we more alike than we different, and that we want the same thing.
Well,
how do you change that? That I feel that a lot of times the politicians tell white poor people, these people are your enemy. These people are taken from you. The immigrants are taken from you. The blacks are taken from you. Everybody that doesn't look like you are taken from you.
Right.
You know.
By and large, the white poor people don't tend to vote, especially in the South. It's to change the mindset. There has to be more. There has to be more attention to the truth. Okay, and the only way, and that's not going to happen.
No, absolutely not.
In the southern states,
and with the media that we have, and with the technology that we have.
Yeah, and what and right now we've got the nation's divided. The Fox News.
Oh my God!
The worst thing that this country could have ever experienced. They created a partisan news network, and so they legitimized partisan news, and everybody is tuned into their partisan news networks, and there's few there's not enough people that listen to the non-partisan network.
And one of the things that I'm thinking, again, let's go back to capitalism. Because I'm thinking there has to be rules, there have to be boundaries. We have these people. We have Elon Musk, that he is from South Africa. We have what's the guy from Fox TV? Murder. What's it? Yes. He is from Australia or England. I don't know which one, because I know he was in England too. How does these rich, white, powerful men come here and change the whole narrative and make so much money keeping us divided? How there's not something saying you can't do that? Because Murder tried in England and they stopped him. They said no, we and he got into big problem because of this girl that got killed, and the narrative that his media threw out there, he got pushed out. Yeah. How do we allow? Then we talk about the immigrants that come work here in the fields, and we don't want them. We absolutely don't want them here. But then we have these rich, powerful men that come here and create so much havoc between, and nobody says nothing. Everybody's like, okay, cool. He won, lost. He's bad. I wanted to say badass, and I can't say that. Oh my God.
Yeah.
And also, what's his name? Murda, right?
Mm-hmm.
He these people come here and do whatever they want.
Uh-huh.
And
Well,
media and narrative is so powerful. It's powerful.
Yeah. Well, this is a free country, and reality is that we believe that people should be able to think however they want to. They should be able to try whatever they want to, as long as it doesn't cause harm to somebody else. Okay, but even that causing harm to other people has also been challenged. But generally, we have held that value that as long as it doesn't cause harm to others, that will allow that free conversation. We're struggling with that currently, but that's why they can do what they do.
They can't do it in their country, though. That's the problem.
Problem, Murdoch came to this country and became an American citizen. As far as I know, he wasn't from Britain.
From Australia.
He was an American trying to import American sentiments, which is a really hard sell in the first place, because they know how eccentric Americans are. Europeans do, and they're very suspicious of anything.
But I believe he was in London, in England first, and then he came here, and he started media in England first, and then he came here. It's not the reverse. He got in trouble there. He got sued there too for what his media and his was doing down there.
That could be. I thought he was Australian, but
he's Australian. But he went to England first and started a media, TV and show down there, and then it went well for him there, and then he came to the United States.
And he came to the U.S. because
yes,
of it? Oh, okay.
Yes, because he got in trouble in his media, and I believe he got sued down there too. So we already knowing and seeing what happened there. How do we allow him to come here and do the same thing and profit of telling lies? A profit of creating a giant of narrative that is not true. And I stayed in a hotel for a couple months, and I realized that Fox TV is on every cable. You get it everywhere, and every cable imaginable. You don't get every news channel in these hotels, but they make sure you get this for 24 hours everywhere you go.
Which tells you the political persuasion of the boss. When you stay in those kinds of places, that tells you what kind of leadership owns the place.
So and I feel that for cable that is not something today, because we have everything streaming. They get these packages where these channels, the religious channels, include the sport channels, or include in these packages that they sell to the cable company, and they take it. And I think Fox has done that. Said, in order to get cable, this is coming with your cable.
Fox doesn't have that kind of power, but they get that kind of power because of the gatekeepers. I'd like to see someone track that.
Because
being in hotels, when you're getting access to the internet or TV shows.
But it's the same thing with the religious. You get religion whether you like it or not. You get 100 channels of religion whether you like it or not.
But if
it comes in your package too.
If someone would track that,
Mm-hmm.
and who does it, and made it available to the public, I guarantee that would change.
Well, you know,
they get away with it because nobody challenges them on it, and
so,
they're trying to manipulate the public.
So we were talking here about how has the U.S. ever default before? It depends. It depends on who you ask. Yellen.
Yeah, they defaulted in 2011, but it was not intentional.
Yellen, the Treasury Secretary, has said that the U.S. has always paid its bills on time, and that if the Congress does not raise the debt ceiling, America could default for the first time in history. The White House has also claimed that the U.S. faced a first ever default if Congress is unable to raise the debt limit. But Alex Pollock, a former Treasury Department official, argued in 2021 op-ed in The Hill that there are four precedents for U.S. defaults. One, during the Civil War in 1862, when the U.S. printed paper money after the Union's reserve of gold and silver coin were depleted. Two, during the Great Depression in 1933, when the government refused to repay bondholders with gold as agreed to when the securities were sold. And three, in 1968, when the U.S. did not honor silver certificates with an exchange of silver dollars. And four, in 1971, when the government abandoned the Bretton Woods Agreement, which included a commitment to redeem dollars held by a foreign government for gold. Yes.
I didn't pick up on those things. That's cool. That's interesting.
I know, right? So 4 times. And
there was also a 2011 where there was a snafu. There was certain things that were supposed to happen didn't, and the government was stopped from being able to pay anything out. But it was quickly remedied in a couple days. But the ones you mentioned, those were all intentional.
Yes, and these, and then what is the history of requirements? Stricter work requirements for federal aid programs have emerged as a key issue that appears to be holding up negotiations over raising the nation's debt ceiling. Biden has signaled openness to compromise, even as other Democrats have balked. Legislation passed by House Republicans in April will impose new or expanded work requirements for beneficiaries of 3 federal programs: Supplement Nutrition Assistance Program, SNAP, formerly known as Food Stamps, Temporary Assistance for Needy Families, TAF, which offers aid to low-income families with children, and Medicare assistance for adults without dependents. Look at that.
Pastor Dennis, Jasmine, I'm just going to make a quick pause just to recognize that it's been more than an hour and we have to identify our stations, especially KQWC 106.5 in South King County. So this is Siembra Radio Show with Pastor Dennis Gunnarsson and Jasmine Ford. So let's continue. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Chris.
So yes, these are all the stuff that they want to add requirements Because of course we go back to Reagan when he talked about the welfare queen, right? You remember that?
Yep. Which was a total fallacy. It was totally.
And the lady
fabricated.
that they was talking about was a black. It was a white lady doing this stuff. It wasn't a black lady. But let's move on. So again, the poor and the people that are in, and they call this entitlements. I don't like that word because everything that covers this, we pay for those things. You know, they're not given to us. They're not given to, you know, it's not free, really. Entitlement is stuff that they social help for people that vulnerable, but it's not given by the government. It's really we pay into all these services.
Yeah. And the reality is, this is not, the entitlements are much bigger than the ones the Republicans are willing to acknowledge and attack. They protect the entitlements to the rich.
To the rich, exactly.
You know, it's like the whole idea of affirmative action. Affirmative action has happened since this entire nation has existed. We just don't acknowledge affirmative action towards the whites. We only acknowledge affirmative action towards blacks.
Yes.
You know, we've got to talk more accurately about the terminology. The Republicans don't have any problems with entitlements if it is going to rich. They just have a problem with entitlements that go to the poor.
And it is an entitlement to the rich because they really don't need it.
The Democrats oppose entitlements to the rich. The Republicans impose entitlements to the poor.
Is, you know, so this is what right now, according to them, is on the table to negotiate. That we have a bunch of lazy people that just sit around and don't work and receive all these services, social services, you know, that really the Congress and the Senate House and all of them have created entitlements for the work, the job that they do, the position that they do. You know, they get free health care whether they serve one term or two. Once you go into the system and becoming a senator or Congress, once you go in there and you serve one term, you got health care for the rest of your life. That is crazy. That is crazy.
You know, since this nation is founded, the reality is there is a group of people that are lazy and get all kinds of government handouts.
Hello.
They have always been white.
Oh my God.
And wealthy.
Yes, you know, and then they look at and say, you know, because I was talking to my son about that because he was talking about in the Hamas, and I was like, you know, you create. He wasn't poor. The same thing we talk about Bill Gates. They wasn't poor. We talk about the guy from Facebook. He wasn't poor. They just take advantage of the opportunities. And when you have to live in how do you call that word, in survival mode, that you gotta go and work and grind. I don't know if I'm saying the right word, but every day to pay your mortgage or your rent. You don't have the time to sit down and come up with business plans and stuff, because you thinking, where am I gonna get money to put food on my table, how I'm gonna pay my bills, all of that. Poor people don't have the time to sit down and say, well, I'm gonna start a business, I'm gonna put money into this business, are going to utilize the opportunities that are there. Because one thing I have to say about the United States and the capitalism, there is opportunity to, but you have to take chances, and time is gold.
Yeah.
And if you have to, your time is just working, just to pay your basic necessities. You don't have time to sit down to think outside of the box, but just go out and work.
The vast majority of the poor are poor because of one of two things: someone else's bad decisions, usually a wealthy person's bad decisions, or number two, they're disenfranchised. There's something about the system that locks them out.
Well, and that's where I was going, to the system. San Francisco right now. San Francisco has an entire city, I don't know how big, that you go in and is homeless. Only homeless. It feels like the entire Tacoma. You go in and you walk. I was watching this documentary, and I love documentaries. And they have doctors, they have lawyers, they have teachers living in these camps in their cars, and it's just crazy. Why? Because they just finished school, they have this humongous debt, and they can't afford housing. Now tell me, is the system? They did everything right, and they living in their car. How do you go to school and become a doctor, a lawyer, a teacher, and you end up in the streets? It's the system that's set up. There is barriers, and we are expanding that gap between the rich and the poor. Even going to school, people that have degrees, that's struggling. And school is becoming a problem, a debt that don't keep people from going to get into your goal. So we talk about Mark Zuckerberg, we talk about Bill Gates, we talk about Elon Musk. I would tell my son, they had money, they had time to sit back and use the opportunities that were there for them, because they didn't have to live in a survival mode. You know, that is very different than the day-to-day people. You know, we have 2 minutes. This is interesting. I love it. And I didn't finish reading everything, you know, but other countries that have a debt ceiling, Denmark, and we have also, I wanted to mention Australia also, for a little bit, they had a debt ceiling. In 2017, amid the largest budget deficit, thought it was repealed 6 years later. And so, Pastor Dennis, what do we want to finish this conversation with? We see all this entwined connection when it comes to money, power, rich people, people that live in survival mode, and the things that these two different parties advocate for.
Yeah. There's a couple things that I want to mention. One of them is when you compare our national debt to other countries, there are a few countries, including Italy, that have a far worse debt than we do.
Spain for a minute too.
And what's that?
Spain went in bankruptcy too for a minute. Yes.
But the several countries are in the same place as we are, and so we're not unique in that way. But one of the problems we have to deal with is by defaulting, we risk destabilizing the
whole financial.
Okay, we can cause the nation to be rated at a lower credit rating, which means that finances basically would stop at some point if they allow this to go on. Americans could see huge increases in their interest rates to move forward. Anybody who does not have a fixed income rate, a tax rate, interest rate, sorry, would be priced out of the market, and they'd lose whatever they've got. Those of us who have fixed rates, it wouldn't affect us at all, at least not for the
time that we have the interest rate. But for the
tax
day,
filers would have to wait. There's just a mountain.
okay, so we want to finish by saying, this is big and long, and we might have to have another show talking about debt and stuff. But I just wanted to thank you, Pastor Dennis, for sitting this morning with me, and Christian for producing and directing the show, and everyone that is listening to us through VT Radio Universal. This is your host, Yasmin Ford, and co-host, Pastor Dennis. Wishing you guys a beautiful, blessed day this morning. Have a wonderful day, and maybe next time we can get more into that about the debt ceiling. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.